Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
News at 9. I am Uyai Aneka and coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Let's take a look at the major stories. President Tinubu gives ministers marching order to revive economy. Federal government evacuates 100 Nigerian irregular migrants freed from Libyan detention. Plus, France bans Muslim students from wearing dress in schools. We'll bring you details of these stories and more in a moment. Good evening and thanks for joining us. First in the news tonight, President Bola Tinubu today gave the Federal Executive Council FEC a marching order to marshal the revival of the economy and make life more bearable for the people. This was disclosed during the inaugural council meeting, where he rolled out the roadmap for the economy going forward and urged the new Federal Executive Council to evolve developmental targets along the 8 priority areas of his renewed hope administration. The council also examined the president's 8-point agenda, including national security, economy, agriculture, power, oil and gas, transportation, education, healthcare, the digital economy, women empowerment, and judicial reform, among others.
The expectation is high, and there's tough time right now. We must work hard, commit ourselves and create a buoyant economy that will serve every Nigerian. Every Nigerian. We have from employment that is a level that is not acceptable. We are threatened by climate changes. You still have underemployment. But to turn things around, you have been selected to perform your utmost best.
Briefing State House correspondents after the meeting, the ministers who were led by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, and the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajurin Gelali, have unanimously assured that they are inspired by President's disposition and the impact of government will soon be evident across the entire nation.
Examined the President's 8-point agenda, his 8 priority areas for moving the Nigerian economy forward and for delivering to Nigerians. And those are basically food security, ending poverty, economic growth and job creation, access to capital, particularly consumer credit, inclusivity in all its dimensions, particularly as regards youth and women, improving security, improving the playing field on which people and particularly companies operate, rule of law, and of course, fighting corruption.
So basically, that is it. We are all fired up as cabinet members who have made our commitments to Mr. President, and I'm sure he's equally pleased with the kind of commitments that we have laid out today, and God willing, we should be able to achieve those targets within the shortest possible time. But one thing I must say is food security is what this administration of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has spelled out to do, is to make sure, like I've earlier stated, that food is available, affordable, and
the poorest and most vulnerable populations, girls, women, children, disabled, are an important element in that human capital agenda of this administration. The bias is towards action so that we get things done. I think it's very clear that the President wants us to domesticate our efforts within our own national context, but also to be very practical in the interventions that we make. And with those marching orders, we now have our work cut out for us, and will continue to refine as the Coordinating Minister of the Economy indicated. Things done. I think it's very clear that the President wants us to domesticate our efforts within our own national context, but also to be very practical in the interventions that we make. And
at the meeting, where the Vice President Kashim Shettima, Secretary to the Government of the Federation George Akume, ahead of the Civil Service of the Federation Folashade Yemi Ethon, National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu, Chief of Staff to the President Femi Gbadabiamila, among others, recalled that after confirmation of the appointment of the 45 ministers by the Senate, they were sworn in by the President on the 21st of August 2023. Since the swearing in, the ministers had familiarized themselves with their ministries before today's FEC meeting. Meanwhile, as part of a broader effort to reduce the cost of governance in Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu has directed the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs to freeze the processing of visas for all government officials seeking to travel to New York for the United Nations General Assembly without proof of direct participation in the UNGA's official schedule of activities. This was contained in a statement signed by Ajurin Gelali, the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. To prevent any sharp practice in this regard, the U.S. mission in Nigeria is accordingly guided on official visa processing, while Nigeria's permanent mission in New York is further directed to prevent and stop the accreditation of any government official who is not placed on the protocol list forwarded by the approving authority. By this directive of the President, all federal ministries, departments and agencies are mandated to ensure that all officials who are approved for inclusion in the UNGA delegation strictly limit the number of aides and associated staff partaking in the event. Where excesses or anomalies in this regard are identified, they will be removed during the final verification process. The President wishes to affirm that henceforth, government officials and government expenditure must reflect the prudence and sacrifice being made by well-meaning Nigerians across the nation. In the meantime, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has declared that Nigeria will not sustain failed economic theory that sees to the wastage of 90% of its scarce revenue in the servicing of external debt in the midst of many development challenges facing the country. The President made the statement in Abuja while declaring open the annual conference of the Nigerian Bar Association at the Velodrome Chief MKO Abiola Stadium, while energizing the gathering of 16,190 lawyers in attendance. With an extemporaneous speech, President Tinubu stated that the prosperity Nigerians require will only occur once poverty is banished from the society, with the focused cooperation of Nigeria's private sector leaders, many of whom were present at the opening ceremony.
It is a shame not to have electricity for the majority of homes in Nigeria. Yes, poverty is not a shameful thing, but not acceptable. We must banish it. So you all, rigorously thinking of investing in Nigeria must be a dream. But let's interrogate, how did we get here? The hardship. But can we continue to service external debts with over 90% of our revenue? It's a path to destruction.
The President also renewed his commitment to deal conclusively with the pressing issue of remuneration for judicial officers and legal practitioners, noting that true justice reform must begin with world-class salaries and benefits for legal professionals in Nigeria.
For us, this number matters. Over 60,000 legal minds you are here not to picnic. You are here to chart the path. And my trust and respect is for all of you gathered here. So that together we can build our country and set Nigeria on the path of greatness. I promise you, I will do my very best.
address, the NBA President Yakubu Mekiel San expressed the confidence of the association in the ability of President Bola Tinubu to deliver good governance to Nigeria because of his pedigree and past track record of excellent performance in Lagos State, where he was the governor between 1999 and 2007.
Decided to go on with this conversation around the thematic areas of security, economy, and administration of justice, because these are matters that are of great concern to the people of this country. It is our intention that at the end of this meeting, we would have set an agenda on behalf of the people of this country.
My humble charge to all legal practitioners in Nigeria, be it of the bench or at the bar, is that in the discharge of our professional endeavors, we should be continually guided by the need to place the interests of the nation first.
Transforming Nigeria is a journey that demands our collective dedication. Building across political affiliations, ethnic differences, and socio-economic differences. Building and transforming our nation is one that is not the responsibility of our government alone. Great nations start with great people, not great leaders.
The conference was attended by the Chief of Staff to the President Femi Gbajabiamila, Minister of Federal Capital Territory Nyesom Wike, Minister of Sports John Enoff, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation Boss Mustafa, past NBA presidents and other senior government officials. Away from that, the federal government, with the support of the International Organization for Migration, has evacuated 139 Nigerian irregular migrants freed from detention centers across Libya. Ambassador Kabiru Musa charged the affairs interior in a statement made available to newsmen today in Abuja, said that the exercise seeks to ensure that no Nigerian is abandoned abroad for migration offenses. According to Musa, the evacuees, comprising of 85 males, 51 females, 2 children and 1 infant, are expected to arrive at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, today. Meanwhile, the federal government has said it inherited a bad economy with an unacceptable high rate of unemployment. The government also assured Nigerians that the administration of President Bola Tinubu will not rely on borrowing, and that he pledged to be transparent, honest and accountable to the people. This is as the president has promised to create about 50 million jobs through the Ministry of Trade and Investment. Briefing State House correspondents at the end of the inaugural Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Bola Tinubu at the Council Chamber, Presidential Villa, Abuja. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, while fielding questions from journalists, said that Tinubu's administration met a very bad economy with inflation at 24%. From the Red Chambers, the Senate, through its Committee on Finance, has said that Nigeria could generate about $3 billion from solid minerals. The chairman of the Finance Committee, Sani Musa, in a statement noted that the informal sector, particularly the mining industry, is a hidden gem in the nation's revenue potential. He also stated the Senate Finance Committee will seriously look at the informal sector, which constitutes about 80% of the Nigerian economy, saying that the committee will also look into empowering the informal sector with the spotlight on mining. According to him, the strategic move will bring economic benefits while promoting safer and more responsible practices. From the Green Chambers now, where members of the House of Representatives said they would make a proposal to the federal government in the next few days on the need for the privatization of the 4 national refineries. The chairman of the House Committee on Petroleum Upstream, Ikenga Imo Ugochinyere, dropped the hint today during the committee's courtesy visit to the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, NIATI, in Abuja. He said the committee has predicated the proposal on the fact that the rehabilitation of the refineries has gulped funds that would have been sufficient to build new ones. Ugo Chinyere insisted that privatizing the refineries would make them more beneficial to the citizenry since they would provide refined petroleum products domestically. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has vowed to abolish the use of waiver in recruitment exercises in ministries, departments and agencies MDA of government. The lawmakers described waiver as an abuse of recruitment processes where nepotism and favoritism takes center stage. Yusuf Gadi, Chairman Ad hoc Committee on Job Racketeering and Mismanagement of IPPIS, said this when the Registrar of National Postgraduate Medical College NPGMC appeared before it in Abuja on Monday. Speaking, Fatio Ogorende said granting a waiver in recruitment exercises by any MDA is not for the good of the country, adding that waiver had been severely abused by the various MDAs. He said any recruitments that would not follow due process in advertising such on the pages of national dailies would no longer be tolerated. In another development, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has urged Nigerians not to panic following plans to release water from the Lakdo Dam in Cameroon. In a letter dated August 21, 2023, signed by the Director of African Affairs of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Ambassador Omar Salisu, the ministry notified NEMA of plans by Cameroonian authorities to release water from the Lakdo Dam. The envoy urged NEMA to sensitize those who may be impacted by the opening of the dam. NEMA, in a statement in Abuja today by its head of press, Mazo Ezekiel, however, stated that it was working with critical stakeholders at various levels to ensure that the opening of the dam does not have a negative impact on communities in the states that would be affected. The states likely to be affected are Adamawa, Taraba, Benue, Nasarawa, Kogi, Anambra, Enugu, Edo, Delta, Rivers, and Bayelsa states. In a separate development, Action Aid Nigeria has stressed the urgent need for collaboration between government and private organizations to establish a long-term sustainable measure to mitigate the adverse effect of flooding in Nigeria. The board chair of Action Aid Nigeria, Jume Umar Adiola, made this known today at the public introduction of the organization's new country director, Andrew Mamedu, in Abuja. The board chair, speaking on the notification from Foreign Affairs Ministry that Cameroon plans to open the Lakdo Dam, assured the Nigerians of Action Aid's readiness to collaborate with relevant stakeholders to lessen the disaster. She also expressed satisfaction over the emergence of Andrew Mamedu as Action Aid Country Director, noting that he is a visionary leader capable of guiding the organization to a new era of transformative impact. The newly appointed Country Director, Andrew Mamedu, assured the leadership of the organization of his commitment to amplifying the voices of those living in poverty and exclusion to achieve Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Mamedu also reiterated Action Aid's commitment to fostering national and international partnerships to address the root causes of poverty and inequality, especially women, girls, and persons with disabilities.
So we are working with government to say, how do we establish formal higher grounds, not places, not schools that would keep our children out of school. So that is, you are trying to quench one fire and you are then creating another problem with that. So you are keeping our children out of school. So those higher ground, where are the places we can use? If NYSC camps are free, maybe we can use them at those points. So those kind of places that are temporary locations for some activities, we can plan them for higher grounds, or we build new locations. So those are the things in terms of long-term sustainable things that we are looking at for dealing with flood. So we are not school. I pledge that my tenure as country director will be defined by open dialogue, collaboration, and an unrelenting pursuit of sustainable development. We will amplify the voices of those living in poverty and exclusion, champion their rights, and tirelessly strive to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal, which is a global benchmark that guides all of us. Our world is increasingly interconnected, and so are our challenges and solutions. Actually, Nigeria will continue to foster national and international partnerships and alliances to address the root causes of poverty and inequality within our nation. I pledge that my tenure as country director will be.
Elsewhere, the Nigerian Society of Engineers, NSE, has faulted the reasons put forward by electricity distribution companies to justify bids for tariff increase, saying most figures presented by the discourse were far from reality. NSE President Tasiu Gidari Wudio, who spoke to journalists in Abuja, explained that rather than seek for a tariff increase, utilities should reduce their payments to consultants and other operating expenses. Gidari Wudio noted that the figures presented during public hearings held by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, last month showed that there was no real justification for tariff increase. Away from that, the Federal Capital Territory Administration, FCTA, has demolished a fully completed multi-million naira duplex for building on a plot belonging to the late Alake of Egbalan, Oba Oyebande Lipede. The building, located on plot 226 Cadastral Zone AO2 Wuse 1, Wuse Zone 6 District, is said to belong to Oba Lipede, but was fraudulently taken over by the duo of Ibrahim Mohammed Kamba and Ademu Teku, who illegally constructed the duplex against all warnings. Director, Department of Development Control, Mukta Galadima, said his team had to carry out an extensive investigation to ascertain the original owner of the plot, given varying claims that were being put forward by the parties. According to him, the administration will not consider the status of any defaulting developer once development rules and regulations are violated. In education, one of the English-speaking countries in West Africa, Gambia, has solicited for postgraduate scholarships in Nigerian universities for its students. The Gambian Minister of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, Professor Pierre Gomez, made the appeal during a courtesy visit to the Acting Executive Secretary of National Universities Commission, NUC, Chris Miyake, in Abuja today. Gomez, who commended Nigeria for laying the foundation of university education in Gambia, said most of the principal officers, including the Vice-Chancellor in the first university in the country, were Nigerians. While commending the quality of Nigerian universities, the minister said Gambians who had earlier undergone postgraduate programs in Nigerian universities under the World Bank-sponsored African Center of Excellence, AEC, are now playing strategic roles in the country. He said Gambia is particularly interested in postgraduate scholarships in science, technology, engineering and mathematics STEM programs.
Nigeria is offering to the Gambia in different areas, but today's visit is specifically on higher education. So the support that the Gambia is receiving on human capital and capacity building. And that's the essence of our visit here, to see how best we can harness that bilateral cooperation between Banjul and Abuja to ensure that our citizenry get the right education to help them take charge of their destiny. We are looking for a well-informed, well-educated citizenry, and that cannot be done if it is not anchored on higher education, because that's the road for freedom, giving our youths the opportunity to take charge of their destiny. And here to see how best we can continue working together and building capacity, especially at postgraduate level, or our different staff from our different satellite institutions. As you know, Nigeria is also supporting the Gambia in different ways and giving them scholarships and some of.
Responding, the acting executive secretary of NUC, Chris Miyake, who was joined by other directors in the commission, assured the Minister of Support, saying Nigeria would not relent in playing a big brother's role despite having its own challenges. On the request for postgraduate scholarships, Miyake urged the Gambian minister to send a formal proposal on the specific programs and universities of choice in order for NUC to process the request, while saying NUC was also ready to encourage joint research between scholars in Nigeria and those in Gambia to address shared problems. Miyake revealed that the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, has come up with a plan that will attract about 500 students from Gambia to Nigerian universities and called for exploration of the opportunity.
Months and weeks begin to take a look at numbers, the institutional affiliations where these scholarships could be attainable, but we're more than disposed as a commission, as a university system, because Nigeria, one of the core foreign policy statements of Nigeria is to start with the concentric circle. That Africa is a centerpiece of our knowledge and public diplomacy. And in spite of everything, we're very confident that we will.
Still in education, the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TETFund, said it has disbursed the sum of 550 million naira to the Kaduna State College of Education, Gideon Waya, for the purpose of addressing insecurity in the institution. Executive Secretary of TETFund, Sonia John, disclosed this today when a Kaduna State government delegation led by the state's governor, Uba Sani, paid him a courtesy visit at the fund's headquarters in Abuja. A journal who noted that the disbursement was beyond the normal allocations disclosed that the fund was also disbursed 500 million naira to Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, for the completion of one project, in addition to making it a center of excellence. According to him, the same amount was also given to Kaduna State University to complete some projects in its Kafanchan campus, adding that the fund will expedite action to complete some projects in the university which earlier had challenges. The TETFund board assured the state government that one of the public tertiary institutions in the state will benefit from the TETFund's special high-impact intervention in 2024 after the cycle of 6 years since the state last benefited. In another development, the Police Service Commission has ordered 4 senior deputy inspectors general of police, Dan Malam Mohammed, Moses Jibobo, Hafiz Inuwa, and Adeleke Bode to immediately proceed on compulsory retirement for failing to retire following the appointment of their colleague Olukade Betokun as the acting Inspector General of Police. The PSC, however, approved the appointment of 4 Assistant Inspectors General of Police, Ibrahim Kauche, Daniel Sokari Pedro, Ayuba Ekbeji, and Usman Nagogo, to the rank of DRGs, pending ratification by the board of the commission to replace the retired DRGs. The spokesperson for the commission, Ike Chikuani, disclosed this to journalists in Abuja, noting that the PSC gave the order and the exercise of its statutory powers pursuant to the 3rd schedule, Part 1M, Para A and B of the 1999 Constitution, reinforced with Section 6 of the PSC Establishment Act of 2001, Para A, C, D, E, and F. He explained that the order became imperative because the PSC had expected those DRGs who were seniors in rank prior to Egbetokun's appointment as RG to voluntarily retire, adding that such expected application was in consonance with the revered tradition of discipline and regimented culture of the Nigeria Police Force. Back here, the Akwa Ibom State Governor, Pastor Moina, has again assured on his administration's commitment to the systematic implementation of the Arise Agenda blueprint for delivery of dividends of democracy to the people of the state. The governor was speaking at the grand finale of the 19th Annual Convention of All Nations Christian Ministries International at the church headquarters in Eket local government area. Governor Eno, the founding and lead pastor of the church before his election as governor, thanked God for bringing the church this far and for standing by the church through the convention, and particularly appreciated the clergymen, dignitaries, members of the church, and the guests for identifying with the church's vision by turning up and ensuring a successful hosting of the convention. The governor, however, explained that the Arise Agenda blueprint was carefully developed to address the developmental needs of the people at the grassroots, expressing confidence that the blueprint will achieve its objectives given its systematic implementation for the development of the state in less than 100 days in office. Meanwhile, Governor Moina has also cautioned community leaders in Akwa Ibom State against limiting the government largesse to members of the ruling party, as he reassured of his commitment to bringing the government closer to the people at the grassroots. Governor Eno gave the assurances while addressing members of his ward, Ibiakman Obotom Ward 2, at Ikorek Benudon, in Serubium local government area, during a statewide maiden ward meeting of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) after the elections. The governor, while expressing gratitude to the people for their support, admonished leaders and members of the PDP at the grassroots to endeavor to embrace all in the community and share the goodwill of government with them as a means to foster peace and unity in the state. Also speaking at Ndukboise, the Obiom North Ward 3 headquarters, the governor thanked the people for the tremendous support to the party in the elections and encouraged all party faithful to remain optimistic of reward. Earlier in his speech, the Biakwan Obotom Ward 2 chairman and chairman of Instrubium Ward, Chairman Forum Ukwong Michael, had thanked the governor for keeping his promise of coming down to the people at the ward level. By this, he said, Governor Eno has exemplified his position that all political officers return to connect with their constituents. Government House correspondent Jane Noah reports that the ward chairman said the people of the 11 units of Ibiakman Obotom Ward 2 and indeed Inserubium people were proud of Pastor Omoina's conduct and performance in office within his few months in office as governor, and expressed optimism that he will not disappoint the people at any time in his administration. Still to come in the news. Oil prices rise for a third session. Stay tuned for details of this and more after this time out. Thanks for staying tuned, and now to the rest of the news stories. In Africa, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has demanded a shorter transition from the junta in Niger. The chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, President Bola Tinubu, told the Ulamas during a meeting that the 3-year transition proposed by the military leaders was unacceptable to the regional body. A member of the Islamic clerics who met with the president, the National Missioner Ansar Uddin Society of Nigeria, Sheikh Abdurrahman Ahmed, disclosed this to newsmen in an interview. Ahmed said Tinubu insisted that the military leaders must give specifics of the transition program, which must also be brief. Reports say the Ulamas had held a meeting with the Niger junta in a bid to avert military intervention to restore democracy in the Francophone country as planned by the ECOWAS. Still in Africa, Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF group has mapped out its vision to end the conflict between it and the country's regular army, signaling readiness for a negotiated settlement. The RSF leader Mohamed Dagalo, in a statement, noted that any settlement to end the war must set the country on the path to a full civilian rule based on democratic norms. It said the solution must address the root causes of Sudan's wars through a broad and inclusive dialogue involving all civil stakeholders and must be directed towards achieving a lasting ceasefire. According to the statement, a new national and professional army must be created in Sudan. Meanwhile, 5 children have died in a fire in an informal settlement in South Africa's capital, Pretoria. According to local reports, the mothers of the children, 3 boys and 2 girls, aged between 1 and 7, had been left alone at home overnight. Reports say the children's bodies were discovered by firefighters who put out the blaze, and that the mothers had been arrested and taken to the local police station for questioning. Meanwhile, the cause of the fire is not yet known and investigations are ongoing. In the meantime, close to 60,000 Kenyans who have applied for passports since March have been left in limbo after printing equipment broke down, and the government has now announced that it will borrow machines from private investors to clear the backlog. According to Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration, Kithure Kindiki, the problem is not just that Kenya's current passport printing machines are outdated. There are also corrupt agents who extort bribes from applicants. He told Parliament last week that he would carry out a cleanup of Kenya's immigration agency, and today it was announced that the daily passport printing rate would rise to 5,000. Meanwhile, in recent months, government inefficiencies have led to delays issuing identity cards, driver's licenses, birth certificates and police clearance certificates, sparking widespread frustration and discontent among Kenyans. Elsewhere, the runner-up in Zimbabwe's presidential election, Nelson Chamisa, has accused President Emmerson Mnangagwa of carrying out an electoral coup. The leader of the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change described official results from Wednesday's election as a sham and argued that international observers had reached the same conclusion. At press conference, Chamisa, who got 44% of the votes against Mnangagwa's 52.6%, allegedly accused the electoral body of announcing false results. Meanwhile, President Mnangagwa has dismissed international criticism of the poll and insists that Zimbabwe's election was free and fair. Still in Africa, Libya's foreign minister has been suspended from office after it emerged that she met Israeli counterpart in Rome last week. Israel had described the meeting as an historic first step in establishing relations, but Njala al-Monakh said it was a chance and unofficial encounter during discussions with the Italian foreign minister. Monakh is now under investigation. Will report to the Prime Minister within 3 days of the event. Meanwhile, the Presidential Council, which represents Libya's 3 provinces, said it was illegal to normalize relations with Israel. In the meantime, negotiations over the controversial mega dam that Ethiopia is building on the Blue Nile River have resumed in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. A statement by Ethiopia's communications office confirmed the resumption of talks. The $5 billion hydroelectric dam has been at center of diplomatic role for more than a decade between Ethiopia and the 2 downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan. Egypt and Sudan fear their essential water supplies are threatened by the dam. Elsewhere, members of Somalia's National Consultative Council have agreed to continue with a major military offensive against the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Shabaab militant group, which began in August last year. The council, which brings together the leaders of the federal government and regional states, met in the central town of Dusmara to discuss the fight against the group. In a statement published on X, the presidency said the leaders agreed to coordinate the offensive and align it with the national counter-terrorism strategy to end the group's long-running insurgency. Reports say the meeting came as after the army seized a major Al-Shabaab stronghold in the central Galgadod region in what the local media described as a significant blow to the group. Meanwhile, President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has vowed to defeat the group before the end of 2023. On the foreign scene, female students will no longer be allowed to wear the loose-fitting abaya dress favored by some Muslim women. The move comes almost 20 years after France banned headscarves from state schools. According to reports, children in French state schools will no longer be allowed to wear the abaya, a long loose-fitting dress worn by some Muslim women. Meanwhile, the French education minister announced the ban ahead of the school term starting at the start of September. France has a strict ban on religious symbols in state schools and has banned pupils from wearing headscarves since 2004. Still on the foreign scene, France President Emmanuel Macron says the country's ambassador to Niger Republic is still in the coup-hit Sahel country despite an ultimatum from the new army leaders to leave his post. During a major foreign policy speech to ambassadors gathered in Paris, Macron confirmed that French envoy Sylvain Ite was listening in from Niger's capital, Niamey, despite being given a 48-hour deadline to leave the country. Macron insisted that France would not change its position in condemning the coup and offering support to Bazoum, stressing that he had been democratically elected and was being courageous by refusing to resign. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the country's elections for next year may hold as scheduled, but will need financial support for a complex undertaking during the wartime. Zelensky, in an interview, noted that the United States had held an election during the Second World War. The president added that he would not take money earmarked for weapons to spend on holding elections and hoped that the US and Europe would provide financial support. In the meantime, a second civilian cargo ship to sail from Ukraine since Russia withdrew from a UN-backed Black Sea grain export agreement safely reached Istanbul today. The news came after Ukraine said its troops had liberated the southeastern village of Robotin and were trying to advance further south in their counter-offensive against Russian forces. Elsewhere, a Swedish-Russian man arrested last year in a spectacular helicopter raid on his suburban Stockholm home was charged in Sweden today with providing Western technology to Russia's military industry. Sergei Kastov, a 60-year-old dual national, was formally charged with carrying out unlawful intelligence